Some cities are just names on a map. They tell us where to get gas or groceries. And some places, like Kandahar, are so important they change the world. You've probably heard about it. It's that S. Because this place played a big part in one of the most important stories of our time, the fight against terrorism. This is a story about a group called the Mujahideen. Let me tell you, they're not your average bunch. These guys took over Afghanistan back in the 1990s and ruled it like it was their own private kingdom. They wanted to live life according to their version of Islamic law, and they weren't afraid to show it. Now, their home base, their very own personal Camelot, was Kandahar. This city in southern Afghanistan is where the Mujahideen first got together, and by 1996, they had taken over the whole country. They marched into Kabul, the capital, and made themselves at home. Kandahar was the Mujahideen's main hub until 2001. It wasn't just a city. It was their heartbeat and spirit. But all good things must come to an end, or so we thought. That brings us to September 11th, 2001. We know it as 9/11, one of the darkest days in history. On that day, terrorists struck the United States. They crashed planes into the World Trade Center and other buildings. Americans were shocked and angry. They demanded revenge. And here's where our story takes a turn. The terrorists who planned these attacks were part of a group called Al-Qaeda. And guess who was giving them a safe haven? The Mujahideen. They wouldn't let the United States touch Al-Qaeda, so America decided to take matters into its own hands. They launched something called Operation Enduring Freedom. Basically, they went to war with the Taliban. The goal? Kick the Mujahideen out of Afghanistan and capture Osama bin Laden, the boss of Al-Qaeda. Kabul fell in November of that year. Other major cities followed, like Mazar-e-Sharif and Herat. Before long, the Taliban were on the run. But one place held out: Kandahar. If the Mujahideen lost Kandahar, they'd lose everything. It was their spiritual home, the birthplace of their movement. The city was surrounded by mountains, making it hard to attack. But here's the thing: the Mujahideen, despite being fierce fighters, couldn't win against the superpower that was the United States. They were outgunned and outmatched. By late November, Kandahar was surrounded. U.S. Special Forces, British troops, and Afghan militias were closing in. The Mujahideen knew they couldn't hold out forever. They were desperate. Imagine being a soldier in this situation. On one side, you have the might of the United States, and on the other, the hope for a better future. Some Mujahideen soldiers switched sides, joining the fight against their former comrades. Others laid down their weapons and waited for the inevitable. All the while, American fighter jets soared overhead, raining down bombs on the Mujahideen's positions. The air was filled with the roar of engines and the rumble of explosions. It was relentless. Amidst this chaos, Mullah Omar, the Mujahideen's leader, tried to rally his troops. He was the man who started it all. Back in the 1990s, he'd brought the Mujahideen's movement to life in Kandahar. Now he was trying to save his legacy from crumbling to dust. But his efforts seemed in vain. Morale was plummeting. Soldiers who'd stood firm were now running away, melting into the mountains or fleeing across the border to Pakistan. Meanwhile, the city was in turmoil. Homes were damaged, markets were deserted, and fear hung heavy in the air. No one knew what would happen next. On December 7, 2001, after weeks of intense fighting, it happened. The Mujahideen surrendered Kandahar. They handed the city over to the Northern Alliance, a group of Afghan fighters who'd been helping the Americans. It was a moment etched in history. The Taliban leaders vanished, leaving their soldiers to fend for themselves. Mullah Omar escaped on a motorcycle. He slipped through the city disguised as a civilian, leaving behind the life he'd built over the past 2 decades. Kandahar was free, at least for now. As American and Afghan flags fluttered in the wind, people poured into the streets. There was dancing, singing, even gunfire in the air. They celebrated the fall of the Mujahideen. But let's be real, this wasn't the end. It was just the start of something much bigger, a story that has echoes even today. After the Taliban fell, Kandahar remained a hotbed of tension. Attacks continued, and peace seemed like a distant dream. The soil of Kandahar was soaked with the blood of those who fought to bring peace, and those who resisted it. Families were torn apart. Homes were destroyed. Children who once ran through the streets playing now carried guns. Schools were burned and hospitals struggled to cope, yet amidst the darkness there was hope. People came together to rebuild their lives. They cleared the rubble, piece by piece, trying to put their lives back together. For many, faith became their anchor. They turned to religion for solace, finding strength in their beliefs. But for others, the scars ran deeper. Years of Mujahideen's rule had left an indelible mark. Some blamed the Mujahideens for their suffering, vowing never to forgive them. Others saw the broader picture. They understood that war doesn't just destroy buildings, it shatters lives. As the sun set over Kandahar, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, people grappled with the ghosts of their past. Every shadow seemed to whisper tales of loss and pain. But resilience is a powerful force. The people of Kandahar were resilient. They told stories to keep their culture alive. They sang songs of hope and wove tales of bravery. Years went by, and Kandahar slowly healed. The wounds of the past still ached, but life went on. People worked, they loved, they dreamed. But fate had a way of repeating itself. In 2010, Kandahar became a battleground once more. Fatah and Afghan forces fought hard to push the Taliban out, but it wasn't easy. Suicide bombers struck, fighters ambushed, and innocent people paid the price. The cycle of violence seemed unending, yet through it all the spirit of Kandahar endured. Ordinary people became heroes. Shopkeepers provided shelter to those in need. Farmers shared their crops and teachers mentored the next generation. Fast forward to August 2021, nearly 20 years since the Mujahideens first fell. Can you believe it? After 2 decades of war, the Mujahideens were back in power. It was a moment that shocked the world. Images of people fleeing, of families torn apart, and of a nation teetering on the brink flashed across TV screens and computer screens. But let's be real. The fall of Kandahar in 2021 wasn't entirely unexpected. The writing was on the wall. The war had dragged on for too long. People were tired of fighting. They wanted peace, even if it meant accepting the Mujahideens. It's hard to say the Mujahideens had changed, sort of. They were more cunning now, hiding among the people, winning them over with promises of peace. They'd shed their old robes for suits and ties, all the while planning their comeback. Kandahar fell to them once more, and with it, Afghanistan's hopes for a democratic future. It was a bitter pill to swallow. But here's the thing. Understanding history isn't just about knowing dates and events. It's about learning from the past to shape our future. The story of Kandahar teaches us about resilience, courage, and the enduring human spirit. The people of Kandahar have lived through unimaginable hardships, yet they kept going. They rebuilt their lives, defied the odds, and stood up for what they believed in. So yeah, the fall of Kandahar, it's more than just a chapter in history. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can flicker. It's a testament to the indomitable human spirit and a lesson in the complexities of war and its aftermath.